Hey everybody, welcome back to Auto Scholar with Mr. B. I'm Mr. B. Today we have this 2020 Volkswagen Atlas. It is an SEL V6 or VR6, depending on how you want to phrase it, and it is an all-wheel drive or four-motion vehicle. So we have the front brakes on this vehicle are low. We're going to change the pads and rotors. So tools needed, you're just going to need basic hand tools, wrenches, sockets, ratchets, that type thing, and of course a torque wrench to make sure everything is torqued properly. So let's go ahead. We're going to put some aftermarket rotors on this. These are drilled and slotted rotors and some ceramic brake pads. However, if you want to use factory Volkswagen parts, that's of course good as well. So first thing we're going to do is come over here. I'm going to show you exactly what's going on with this brake system and the steps we are going to take to go ahead and get this stuff done. If you learn anything from this video, of course, like the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm also going to be dropping a video on the rear brakes, which are a little bit more complicated than the front due to the parking brake assembly being electronic brakes. So we've got to approach that a little bit differently than this one, but I will post it down in the description and of course up above my head. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we have two bolts that are holding this on right here. This is a 13 millimeter. You may have to hold the inboard caliper guide right here with either vice grips, or you can grab a wrench if you have a thin one to fit in there, and you're just gonna have to hold this, turn, of course, lefty loosey, righty tighty, and then you're going to pull this caliper off. You can either set it up top here, or if you have these handy dandy hangers here, you can hang them up, coat hanger, something like that. You do not want this big heavy caliper hanging by the brake hose, okay? That can damage it. This caliper is heavy. So let's go ahead and get that done. Go ahead and get that off, and I'll show you the next step. All right, so what I do is loosen up both of these before I take any of them off. And what you can do is just put a pair of vice grips right here. The way that these are set up, it's too thin for you to really get a open-end wrench on that inside landing. You'll notice the top bolt on this is going to look different than the bottom one. It'll have like a little weight on it. See that little weight right here? And not sure why that's on there, but let's go ahead and get the bottom done. Okay, now what we're going to do is pull this caliper off. I'm going to hang this up so it doesn't get damaged out of the way. Take our brake pads out. And as you can see, they are just about metal to metal right there. See the metal starting to poke out. Definitely time for some front brakes. Okay, so next bolts need to come out. You have two larger bolts. They're back here. You can't really see them. If I put the camera on the other side, it's just kind of dark, so you can't really see exactly what's going on, but they're two larger bolts, and they are 21 millimeters, 13/16, whichever one you have. You're going to put a large half-inch style breaker bar, or you can use a closed-in wrench, and just loosen both before you take one off. You want to loosen them both. And here are our bolts here. Bracket comes out. What we're going to do is we're going to clean this bracket up real good, and before we lubricate it, you're going to have a T30 right here. This is just your bolt that holds your rotor on there, and it allows the holes to line up for your lug bolts. And then your rotor will come off. Now we will go ahead and put our new rotor on. And make sure you don't get any grease or oil on this. You kind of want to wash these off before you drive it. These things are heavy. There you go. I couldn't really find a torque specification for this. So it doesn't really matter though. It's just meant really to keep things still, because once we bolt the wheel up here, it's not going to matter. So see, I have some fingerprints and stuff around here. We're going to get that clean before we go back with everything else. So let's go ahead. I'm going to show you how to lubricate the brake pads, backings, and also how to lubricate the slides. Okay, so these are the new pads right here. These are going to be our old pads, and we want to keep our old pads because we want to see where the caliper is actually touching these old pads. And so right here you can see there's an outline, and over here is where the caliper is contacting these pads. And so I have some anti-seize. You can use brake lubricant, anti-seize, anything like that. And you don't want to put a real thick coat on, but you want to take your brake pad and you basically want to mimic that on your new pads with this lubricant. You also want to hit up these areas right here because they touch the guides. You do not want to get this on the brake pad material itself, and you do not want to use a whole lot. Just a very light coat. And this will keep the noise down from any vibration the brake pads have against the caliper, and this is going to help the brake pads be quieter. Basically, we're just drawing the outline of where the brakes are. Some people cover the whole pad in this, in the back of the pad, and that's fine if you want to do that too, but I just, to me, I don't want this getting hot and dripping down into the brakes or anything like that, so I just try to use as little as possible. So once we get done with that, move these out of the way. We've got our brake caliper bracket here. I've already washed this down in brake cleaner. It still looks dirty just because of the heat and everything that goes in here, but we're going to pull these out right here. Very careful. And you have your grease here, and you want to clean these off, grease these back up, and put these back in. And you can use silicone brake lube, or you can use this anti-seize. Either one is fine. You also want to make sure that these are moving and they're not hung up. If these hang up, you will get uneven brake wear, and your brakes will be less effective. You may get a brake pull. You also, if your brake pads come with new hardware, you want to pop these off and put new hardware on. If not, you just want to clean them up, emery cloth, go ahead and lubricate them up, and that's going to keep anything from squeaking or hanging up in here. Okay, so we're going to do that after we get done cleaning up this slide and getting it relubricated. We'll go back to the car and I'll show you how to put this all back together. Okay, so before we start reassembly, we're going to need to compress the brakes back into the caliper, the brake pistons back into the caliper. I have this tool right here. You can use a C-clamper too. You can use, they've got a couple of different types of tools, screw-in tools and everything for the pistons. So you take the caliper, normally what I do is I just set it up here. And we're going to put our tool in, and very slowly and gently we are going to push this caliper cup or piston back into the caliper. Just like that. Then we're going to hang the caliper back up go ahead and put our slide and our pads back on, and we're almost done. Okay, so now we're going to put our bracket back on with our big bolts right here, 21 millimeter bolts. Okay, so these torque down to 200 Newton meters. So be careful torquing these down. You don't want to put too much pressure on the car you don't want to yank it. You want to pull it off your jack stand or a rack. There you go. Always torque down brake parts. Now let's go get the pads. They just slide in. And we'll put our caliper on. Make sure that this brake line is not twisted. It can cause problems. And we'll put our bolts on. Remember that this one goes up top. And these will torque down to 35 Newton meters. Remember, you may have to hold that slide still, so this will tighten up. So I'm just going to snug it up, and I'll put my torque wrench on it. Okay, so 35 Newton meters equals about 310 inch-pounds. If you have an inch-pounds like I do, it's not very tight. And we're done. We're ready to put the wheel back on. Don't forget to torque your wheels as well. Okay, everybody, so a couple more steps before we are able to drive the vehicle normally. We have to torque the wheels. The wheels torque on the Volkswagen Atlas is 103 foot-pounds. If you have aftermarket wheels, of course, that may be different, but the factory wheels are 103 foot-pounds. Also, we need to remember to key off, engine off, go ahead and pump up the brake pedal. The brake pedal is going to feel weak for the first couple of pumps. That is just going to reset the caliper pistons and get everything lined back up. After that, you need to check the brake fluid, check the level, and check the condition. If you're unaware on how to check the condition, I will put a video in the description that shows you how to do that with a multimeter. So if you like the video, if it taught you anything, of course, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I do have a Atlas playlist with a couple of other Atlas videos, and I'm wanting to add to that. So you will see some new videos pop up from time to time on our Atlas playlist. But I also have some other videos just of general automotive knowledge, since I'm an automotive instructor. Also, all ad revenue for this channel goes to the Augusta Technical College Boost Scholarship for automotive students. So when you watch commercials, I know they can sometimes be maddening, but they are helping my students out. Also, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, VK, a couple other sources as well. So anywhere the social media is, look up Auto Scholar Mr. B, I will be there. And hope you had a good time. Leave me questions in the comments, and we'll see you next time on Auto Scholar Mr. B.